Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name's Adrian Lee. I'm the Academic Secretary and Director of Legal Services at the University of Chester. I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to this opening event of our 6th annual Diversity Festival. It's good to see so many staff and students here, but also friends and partner organisations from outside the university. We've made a special effort this year to attract external guests, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here this morning. We use the festival for a fortnight each February to host a range of events on topics related to equality and diversity, including guest lectures by high-profile speakers, conferences, book readings, debates, fairs and films, theatre productions and training seminars. It's open to students, our own staff and staff from other organisations and the public from our local communities, and is a visible demonstration of our commitment to equality and diversity and creating an inclusive learning and living community across all aspects of university life, one which tries to go beyond ticking boxes and simple compliance, one which seeks proactively to reinforce the benefits of a diverse staff-student population. To judge from the feedback we get, it's much appreciated by many staff, and it helps mainstream equality and raise awareness amongst staff and students. At the same time, I hope we provide some mostly free entertainment. The festival's gone from strength to strength since we started in 2006, when about 200 people attended. By last year, which was our most successful, that had increased to 1,300. During the 5 years or so in which the festival has been running, staff disclosure of disability has increased by 81%, numbers of black and minority ethnic staff and students have increased, and the number of dignity at work complaints has reduced and stayed consistently low. We put these improvements down to increased staff awareness underpinned by a raft of training and development opportunities and the raising of the profile of diversity issues, including through this Diversity Festival. The festival is seen as a pillar of good practice within the university sector, resulting in the organisers being invited to a number of other universities to provide advice on setting up similar projects elsewhere. And so we were delighted to be shortlisted for 2 national awards in the past couple of years: the Times Higher Leadership and Management Award for an Outstanding Human Resources Initiative in 2009, and the Personnel Today Award for Workplace Diversity last year. Not quite, for those who were wondering about the outcomes. With the warning that selections of only 1 or 2 contributions from each festival don't do the programme justice, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I'll say something about highlights from previous festivals. We try to keep each festival fresh by basing it around a different theme. We started in 2006 with the theme of challenging your perceptions. A particular highlight was a keynote address from Pav Akhtar, who was then the National Union of Students' Black Students Officer. Amongst other firsts, he was the first non-white president of Cambridge University Students' Union and the first openly gay Muslim politician. 2007 was the bicentenary of the abolition of slavery, and the theme was slavery and freedom, exploring different aspects of slavery, past and present, and the freedoms of people from discrimination and exploitation. Glyn Rankin, who was then head of legal for the UK Human Trafficking Centre, reflected on modern-day slavery in the UK, and we had a most entertaining hour's talk from human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell, who told us movingly about the struggle for freedom of the LGBT community around the world. In 2008, we opened events up to other institutions and organisations, which helped us pool ideas and knowledge with colleagues from local police forces, NHS trusts and other universities, who'd rarely find themselves drawn together like this to discuss how we respond to issues we all face. Our theme that year was Education to Employment, and we featured lectures from Stonewall on their work on homophobia in schools and throughout education. An MOD exhibition called We Were There, which is still on the National Archive website, was one of the best attended events as we opened it to local schools, and it highlighted a little-known contribution by Britain's ethnic minorities to national defence over the past 250 years. The theme 2 years ago was questioning equality. The top attraction, to judge from the current publicity she's getting, was probably Baroness Saida Varsi, now making the headlines on Islamophobia having passed the dinner table test, but then Shadow Minister for Community Cohesion and Social Action, talking to us one evening about the Conservative Party's vision for work and an inclusive Britain. We also had a guest lecture on why both sides are wrong in the race debate from author and broadcaster Kenan Malik. Last year we had a question time style debate with the parliamentary candidates for Chester, 2 exhibitions, a film programme, a family music day and a pantomime. We had singing and food workshops, a human rights moot, and specific sessions in the curriculum looking at equality. Our theme this year is Equality in a New Era. What are some of the features of the new equality era? Well, we have a new coalition government. What will be the commitment of the component parts? We have a new Equality Act, protecting more widely and getting more publicity than before. In the public sector, we have new equality duties, which, if they aren't more demanding, are at least different and present new and real challenges to decide and publish equality objectives and performance data. But we have an age of austerity. What impact will funding and cost have on equality? And we also seem to have the stirring of an Equality and Human Rights Commission, which is willing to use its powers not only to challenge employers and service providers like ourselves, but also the executive, the government itself. The Commission's latest newsletter, published last week, tells us that, amongst other things, they're going to look at the Treasury's compliance with equality duties in the spending review the Public Bodies Bill, which is rationalising quangos, including possibly the Commission itself, and they're looking at using the United Nations Convention on Discrimination Against Women to strengthen women's rights in the UK. These are fascinating developments, and we've already begun to see change in the courts, who've recently rowed back from a line of decisions that cost alone can't be used to justify discrimination. We have the usual rich and varied programme of events this year, and I'm sure that Catherine has copies of the programme on hand for anybody that would like to see it. Our keynote speaker this morning is Colin Parry, who I look forward to welcoming shortly. We've got fun events such as Bollywood and flamenco dancing, workshops on marriage in different cultures, Welsh culture and Japanese culture. There's life in the closet, trans issues and gender reassignment, teaching and supporting international students, British Sign Language and deaf awareness, a number of conferences including an inspirational women conference on Friday and conferences on equality law and mental health, and the usual mix of films, food, exhibitions and pantomime. We'll have keynote lectures on both hate crime and terrorism from Cheshire Police, on cancer survivorship from one of our lecturers in psychology, who's also the chair of the British Psychosocial Oncology Society, Dr. Nick Holbert-Williams, from the Equality Trust on the economic, social and political aspects of equality, and on offenders with learning difficulties and disabilities from the Prison Reform Trust. For helping us mount such an exciting programme, I'd like to thank all those whose support we've had for this year's festival, particularly Chester Asian and Minority Communities Council, who've co-organised the Marriage in Different Culture, Bollywood dancing and Bring and Share events. We really appreciate your support and the closer links we're building with you. Also Cheshire Constabulary, who are delivering keynote lectures and holding workshops at both Chester and Warrington to engage with local communities. And to all our keynote speakers, conference and workshop contributors, some of whom are our own staff, and some of whom are from outside the university. Thank you for your contributions and support. I must also say a special well done and thanks to Catherine Fagan, our HR Manager for Equality, in putting the programme together almost entirely alone this year. In previous years, Catherine has been one half of a team, but she's played on single-handed when Darren Mooney, our Student Diversity Officer, moved to a new job at the University of Liverpool. Last but by no means least, thanks also to Cheshire West and Chester Council, who've organised this launch event with us and contributed to many of the other festival events. It gives me great pleasure now to welcome to the University and to introduce our keynote speaker for this morning, Mr. Colin Parry, OBE JP. Colin's well known for his work with the charitable organisation which he founded, the Tim Parry Jonathan Ball Foundation for Peace. The foundation is dedicated to providing conflict resolution programmes and activities that benefit children, young people, adults, schools and communities everywhere. Colin's professional career began in 1969 in human resources and personnel management after completing his honours degree in politics at the University of Wales, University College Swansea. For 30 years, he worked in senior human resources roles before establishing his own management consultancy. Colin's efforts helped the progress of the peace process in Northern Ireland. He's been a tireless campaigner for peace and became a prominent authority and speaker in the years following the IRA bombing in Warrington in 1993, in which his second son Tim was killed aged 12. Following this tragedy, Colin and his wife Wendy created the Foundation for Peace and their unique peace centre in Warrington. Colin and Wendy have two surviving children, Dominic and Abigail. Colin was awarded the OBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours List in 2004 and has received a string of other awards and distinctions, including Rotary International's most prestigious award for World Understanding and Peace. He's an inspirational networker and communicator and retains an interest in executive coaching and counselling, using a lifetime of management experience in senior business roles with his extensive experience of meeting and working with high-profile public and political figures. Colin has written and broadcast widely, having many first-person pieces published in national and regional media, and he and Wendy also wrote the book Tim, An Ordinary Boy, published by Hodder in 1994. Colin also hosted his own television series, An Interview with Colin Parry, on Granada Television, in which he interviewed a wide variety of guests. It's unfortunate for him that the Vice-Chancellor is unable to join us this morning, as he and Colin would have shared a common bond as the other Everton supporter. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Colin Parry.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for that very kind introduction from Adrian, and thank you for inviting me here today. I'm here to talk about equality and diversity, subjects about which I am not an expert. And I'm not an expert on too many things apart from Everton Football Club. But frankly, I speak to you this morning as a practitioner rather than as a professional. For the reasons you've heard, events which happened in 1993, my wife, myself, my family were thrown into a place that nobody would ever voluntarily go to, where through totally unforeseen circumstances, our second child, Tim, was killed. If anybody in this room has lost a child, then they'll have an immediate sense of just how difficult that is to deal with and cope with. And I suppose there are a range of choices open to you. One is to just switch off and hide away and lock yourself away and perhaps go slowly insane, which I would have done. Or secondly, you might in time decide to play some kind of an active role. And because I originate from a small fishing village on the west coast, Liverpool, I am by nature opinionated and frankly insufferable sometimes, and that's because I wasn't prepared to just let Tim be forgotten about and become another piece of collateral damage in that ancient battle that's been going on in Ireland and across the British Isles for so long. So what did we decide to do? Well, frankly, mostly spurred on by a huge amount of public support and public sympathy and public encouragement. We, in the first instance, made a TV programme with the BBC for their Panorama series. And that was the very first time I, as a native of Liverpool, had ever set foot in Ireland, which is quite peculiar. I mean, half of Liverpool is founded on Irish emigres who fled the potato famine in 1845 or whenever exactly it was. So I went to Ireland for the very first time with Wendy, and we made a TV programme which in the end drew an audience of 7 million, which was, for Panorama, was quite exceptional. And in the making of that programme, we spent time in all of those flashpoint areas that you've heard of, or I guess you've heard of, like the Falls Road and the Shankill and Turf Lodge, and all of those places where strongly divergent views about the future for the province of Northern Ireland were held, either staunchly Republican or staunchly Loyalist. And in the making of the programme, we encountered many families who were living day by day with the threat of violence either from the other side or, in their opinion, the threat of violence, which they would have called state violence, from the security forces and or the RUC at the time. So life was very, very difficult for all of those people. We found it an immense learning curve to spend time with people who lived this life, this strange life, in this corner of the British Isles. And we learned how they were fearful of attack and yet also mostly fearful of standing up and doing much about it. So we ended up, after the programme was made and after we came home, deciding that we should perhaps try and emulate an organisation we'd seen in Northern Ireland during our visit called the Peace People. Some of the older ones amongst you might remember the Peace People being founded by two women who went on to get the Nobel Peace Prize, Mairead Corrigan and Betty Williams. They experienced the death of two very young children who were killed when an IRA gunman was fleeing the security forces, lost control of his car, having been shot at, mounted the pavement and killed two babies who were in prams being pushed along by the mothers. There was a sense of outrage across Northern Ireland, and the Peace People organisation was formed out of that. And the two women who were the prime movers, like I say, were rewarded with the Nobel Peace Prize. They, as part of their organisation that existed then, had a peace farm in a small town called Coleraine, which is near the Giant's Causeway. And we spent a day during the making of the TV programme in the peace farm, and we witnessed young Northern Irish people, boys, girls, Protestants, Catholics, Unionists, Nationalists, and any other mix you care to think of, arguing with huge passion and very vociferously for their blueprint for the future for Northern Ireland. And you would have thought it would have taken very little for it to have become violent, because the arguments were very acrimonious and very, very strong. And yet the beautiful thing that united them all was that there was no possible solution for Northern Ireland through violence. They all accepted that, despite their divergent views on politics or their divergent views on anything else. And that uniting factor was that there had to be a negotiated, non-violent solution. That influenced us more than anything else in the making of this 45-minute TV programme. And over time, after we'd returned, and after writing this rather excellent book, he says, doing his sales pitch, which I'd like you to buy a copy of later. Not for my benefit, by the way, but the money goes to the charity. But we then decided maybe as parents we could do something, because neither of us is particularly political, neither of us is especially religious, so we were simply two parents who'd lost the child. And over the course of time, we decided we should arrange for a simple youth exchange programme for young people from Warrington, Belfast and Dublin. And that was a very, very simple process where we brought them together at venues in Ireland, because there was no venue in Warrington that was suitable for this purpose. And in that programme of events, they learned to work, play and stay together. And strangely, I think, it made them friends. Why? I don't really know. But the dynamic that goes on in just a week of staying with people that hitherto you never knew is quite remarkable. Friendships can be built where you think friendships would be impossible. And suddenly we had young people who came from the nationalist community in Belfast making friends with young people who came from the unionist community in Belfast, and young people from England who had no bloody idea what the hell went on in Northern Ireland, beginning to get some understanding of what went on in Northern Ireland. And that simple process underpins everything we've done ever since. i.e. bring people together, bring people of opposing beliefs together, because it works. It just works. You can start off feeling very fearful, you can start off feeling very awkward, you can start off having all your beliefs challenged in a way which is very, very uncomfortable, and yet it's a very positive experience. And I'm going to show you, if I can ask Catherine to do the techie bits, I'm going to show you a DVD now that runs for about 6 or 7 minutes. It features one of our patrons who I'm sure you'll recognise, and when that's finished, I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do.
Hello, my name is Emma Thompson, and I'm here to tell you about an initiative, a foundation, which I'm patron, I feel very, very passionately about. In 1993, a 12-year-old called Tim Parry and a 3-year-old called Jonathan Ball were both killed by an IRA bomb in Warrington, which is in the north of England. Now, the response to that, of course, was horror and shock and outrage, but what has been so extraordinary is that out of that horrific, unbelievable tragedy that you don't feel anyone could recover from, the parents of those children have created something quite incredible. I think that all of us are aware of inter-race and interfaith conflict in this country. You can hardly fail to be aware of it if you watch the news or pick up a newspaper at any time. Therefore, we are all aware of the seminal importance of working out how to resolve these conflicts without violence. I'll tell you what my dream is, what I want. I want the leadership programme that the Peace Foundation put into place in a high school in South Leeds. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children, and there were literally 100 instances of conflict in the school every single day, during which the police could have been called. So what the foundation did was they went in with a leadership programme. Now that meant that they took a number of the young people and put them through this programme, and then those young people fed that programme to the rest of the 1,500 or so kids in the school. That school has been transformed by the programme. It has gone from having those 100 instances of violent conflict to having virtually none at all.
The reason that we do the paperball war is because what it shows is that we literally rally the young people into two oppositional sides, and then we invite them to fight with one another. We don't give them any justification as to why they're going to do it, and hopefully most of the time they don't ask for that justification. And then what inevitably happens is that they get swept away with the moment, and they just get involved in something that they're not really aware of. And what it illustrates to the young people is that conflict is the type of thing that people feel very, very passionate about. They often just take sides without really thinking about what they're doing, and how easy it is really to get swept away with the moment. And in a project like this, with the young people coming from the kind of school and area that they come from, which is a hotbed of conflict really, this is just a fantastic opportunity for them to take some real learning back.
I learned from the pickleball thing was how easy it is to start a fight, how easy it is just to start a war with someone.
We have learned more about about stereotyping, discrimination. Yeah, so and we have learned about teamwork. Really, if you work as a team, things work out. But work as individuals, things don't work out for you. So that's the things, and that's all people are equal. No matter what people say in the stereotypings, all that kind of stuff. Just respect them. If you respect each other, things will work out. The most surprising things I've learned this week is that I can get on with anyone, with any race.
The results have been absolutely astonishing, if I'm honest with you. On Monday, it was clear to see that the young people were kind of sticking with their own identity groups. They were very much sitting in their comfort zone and staying with their friends. And as the course of the week has gone, the young people have started to integrate with one another fully, and they've been very engaged in the process. I think because of the kind of the different activities that they've been doing to do the learning, everything from role play through to debating, through to small group discussion, and then interactive team games. It's been an amazing experience to just even to see them grow, because you can see that every single individual has taken something, and whether that be that they've been at the forefront of debates or that they've just been sitting there listening, their participation has been such that everybody will go away from here having learned a great deal, we feel.
I think that conflict resolution, the capacity to resolve conflict without violence, giving that capacity to young people in today's world is the most important gift that can be given. So please think about conflict resolution, think about how important this is, and think about ways in which you can help and you can engage and you can support the Tim Parry Jonathan Ball Foundation. Thanks a lot.
Just as an aside, Emma's an absolutely delightful woman, but considering she's an actress, she was bloody hopeless at learning the script. And that took an enormous amount of editing, believe it or not. But there you are. Nick Robinson, who's the BBC political editor, did the one we did the previous year, and I gave Nick a page of script, and he looked at it, memorised it, and was word perfect. Anyway, there you are. Never mind. All about preconceptions. So you've just seen an example of what we do. It is not an academic approach. We do not teach conflict resolution. I mean, we've got very good friendships with Bradford University, who have the biggest peace studies department, certainly in Europe, I don't know, maybe even globally. And they teach people to bachelor, masters and doctorate status in peace studies, and they have students from all over the globe. Fabulous. We don't try and mirror that, we don't try and emulate them, we don't try and copy them. What we do is run practical courses where young people can easily understand the elements that make conflict, which we will never eradicate, we're not idealists, which make conflict become violent. Because there's nothing wrong with conflict. There's nothing wrong with a bloody good argument. I like a good argument as much as you do. But I have no right to beat you, shoot you, or maim you, or members of your family, for me to impose my beliefs on you. And that's our fundamental principle. It's jaw, not war, war. And we have that same principle underlying and underpinning all the work we do. And the work we do isn't just with young people, we work with adults as well. And we've had some incredible experiences of bringing former British soldiers face to face with former paramilitaries. The men who would have killed them some years ago are now sitting down with them and talking and forming friendships, would you believe? Forming friendships. You may find that hard to believe, but it is true. I could bring former soldiers here now who now would say they are friends with former members of the IRA and the INLA, both of which were, of course, outlawed organisations. It can be done. It can be done. And it's not only just being done in a post-conflict situation, because you may say, oh, hang on, there's a peace deal in Northern Ireland now, so they would become friends, wouldn't they? Well, no. The actual peace deal in Northern Ireland is very, very imperfect. There's now ample evidence that dissident Republicans are starting to build their membership and are starting to become far more active, as if you watch the news, you will know. So it's by no means a done deal in Northern Ireland. And yet, these people who were formerly combatants, who would have been protagonists, can now build friendships. That's the simple message. That's the simple message. And that's what we work on. And I hope that given funding and other opportunities, that it won't be too long before we can start to do some more international work than we do now. Because essentially, most of our work is domestic. But we are increasingly focusing on interfaith and inter-race issues, because the UK, as a very culturally diverse society, has, as you know too, some very serious problems. You know, the London bombers were all British born in West Yorkshire, all British born Muslims, who for reasons of their own deciding became very, very radicalised and who killed themselves, took their own lives and the lives of 52 other people. How do we stop that in the future? Well, if we're lucky, we get intelligence and the security forces or the police can intercept, and I'm sure they do have great successes. But is that all we have to rely on? Well, no, it isn't. We also have to rely on organisations such as ours, working at the level of the schools and communities, as we do, to try and intercept the formation of future terrorists, if I can use that word. And I have to say if I can use that word, because increasingly me using the word terrorist closes doors. It's a strange world we live in. That word itself now has all sorts of connotations. So we talk about politically motivated violence when we mean terrorists, you know? We live in a PC world, don't we? So I can use the word terrorism. I think you know what I'm talking about. But how do we stop these people from doing what they do? I spoke to a conference in Leeds some 6 months after 7/7, and Leeds city councillors approached me afterwards and asked me, could we take the work we'd been doing in an Anglo-Irish context and apply it in a Leeds school? And it was that Leeds school that Emma was talking about. There were 100 incidents a day where the police did get called in. And this was in a school, a multi-million-pound, brand-new school, which was populated by the students of a former white school, or almost entirely white school, and a school which was almost entirely Asian. Both schools closed, brought together in a brand-new, fabulous building. And yet, from day one, they had a massive amount of problems. And our people went in. You saw Kelly, the young lady who was doing much of the talking, terrific character. Kelly went in with our guys and introduced a leadership program which was presented to groups of 24 kids at a time, 3 groups, 3 24s, 72 I think, and those 72 kids then became the cohort who delivered our message in their own way, in their own language, to the rest of the 1,1600 kids. And that school has now become a model school, recognised by Leeds City Council, by Yorkshire and Humberside, whatever county, and by UK government as being an example of best practice of how to work with such issues. So, recognising my time is limited, I'd just like to say basically that ordinary people can make a difference. Ordinary people can become motivated and contribute to an ancient problem if they want to. And that's all my wife and I have done. I'm very proud of that Peace Centre that you saw there, which is where much of our work is done, but not all of it. I'm very proud of the charity that we've built up, and I'm very proud of the fact that we've helped about 25,000 people in the period since 2002, which was when the building became fully operational. What do I get from this? Well, I get to keep my son's name and Jonathan Ball's name, who I never knew, of course, alive. The charity carries the boys' names. The Peace Centre's official title is not the Peace Centre, it's the Tim Parry Jonathan Ball Young People Centre. But it's a bit of a mouthful, so we shorten it to the Peace Centre. Why is that important to me? Well, as you can imagine, I had a young man here who was 12, who went out one day to buy a pair of Neville Southall football shorts and never came home again. I didn't feel that that was something I could just be quiet about, and so I've been vocal ever since. I think it's led to some terrific results, and I'm proud to say that we will continue long after I'm pushing up the daisies. I certainly hope so anyway. Okay, I'm going to wind up now, and I'll wind up with the story which I generally tell at the end of a presentation, which is allegedly true, and this concerns Winston Churchill, who at the end of the Second World War was invited to Harvard in the United States to attend a lecture by an academic from Harvard. And the academic spoke against the name Harvard. He began with the letter H and worked his way through to the letter D and spoke for an hour. And allegedly it was a very turgid speech. And the Prime Minister's host turned to Winston at the end and said, "Mr. Prime Minister, what did you think of the speech?" And Winston, who was noted for his rapier wit, said, "Well, I'm just enormously grateful he wasn't speaking on behalf of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology," which is my own way of reminding myself not to talk for too long. Thank you for listening. I will take any questions if you have any. Otherwise, please come and join me outside later and buy a copy of this book. £5. I will sign it. I will dedicate it. And the £5 goes to the charity, not to me. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Colin. Colleagues, any questions for Colin? There are a couple of roving mics here. Sarah.
Oh, it is on. Okay. One of the things that's notable about the Northern Ireland conflict, and I think it's true about all other conflicts that I can see of this similar type, is that in fact it had gone. Okay, there were problems in the 1920s, but then it had gone relatively unnoticed until violence actually broke out. And it seems to me that it's quite important to recognise where there are trouble spots before that has to happen, because I know that the people, the Catholics in Northern Ireland, felt that they had to perform violent acts in order for their issues to become noticed.
Yeah, it's the old adage about the squeaky wheel gets oiled first. When do you tackle a problem? When you think it's gone away or when it re-emerges? I mean, human nature is you tackle it when it re-emerges. That's not the right thing. What you said is the right thing. To try and keep some momentum and some sense of awareness of a problem before it re-emerges and becomes violent. I know you didn't mean it literally when you said all Catholics in Northern Ireland felt violence was justified. Oh, no. No. I mean, it's a tiny proportion. But yes, I mean, I suspect that governments have so many problems to deal with. I've never been a politician and never aspired to be one, but it's like anybody else, whether you're a manager in a business or a member of staff of a university or whether you're a prime minister, they must have so many things to deal with. And I guess if something goes underground, it's natural enough that you take your eye off the ball and then suddenly it comes and bites you again, as it did with Northern Ireland. The problem, I think, was that once the civil rights protests began in 68, 69, that was the time for action before it then, some months later, turned nasty. As we all know, those of us of a certain age, that's what happened. The signs were there then, as indeed, I mean, I don't know whether Egypt is a good model to talk about, but it's evident already now that there is a serious clash of the two camps between the pro-Mubarak and the anti-Mubarak citizens of Egypt, and who knows how that will pan out, whether the whole country will become chaotic and degenerate, or whether some order will emerge. I don't know. We can only hope that people will start to talk and find common ground.
He said we need a lot less of the passive tolerance of recent years and much more active, muscular liberalism. Are you concerned the drift or the inference that we might take from that, say, we're looking here at prescriptive definitions of Britishness which automatically thereby exclude certain people and may indeed exacerbate senses of alienation and antagonism towards British polity?
I don't find that one easy to answer. I mean, I'm in the realms of just personal opinion. I mean, I'm passionately British and very pro-British. I'm not in the camp of being an apologist for the impact Britain's had on the world over the past few centuries. I think, you can't go back and rewrite history. In terms of being British, well, I don't know what being British is, but if it stands for anything in my mind, it's being open, fairness, reason, listening as much as talking. And I think anybody whose attitude on any point of principle is to yell at you and scream at you and visit violence on you, they have to be resisted. You have to take some action whereby they recognise you will not bend your knee to force, wherever the force is coming from. And I, in my time, have spent many, many hours with former IRA men who've told me the reasons why they did what they did. And they've given compelling political reasons, but I've never found that argument for violence persuasive. Yes, fight your corner, fight in the inverted commas, your corner as much as you want, as these young people at the Peace Farm did. But there is no, in my mind, excuse for ever saying, in the end, violence is justified. I don't think it is. And I would hope that the Britain of today, by and large, if we threw a blanket over us all, would all stand behind that principle, that you don't win an argument through violence. And I think violent language is part of the problem as well as violence itself.
Anyone else?
So I probably won't need the mic, actually. I just
It's people behind you won't hear you.
I just wondered how you felt you're able to cut through. I mean, growing up in Northern Ireland as I did, the peace campaigners were regarded as being somewhat naive. And I wondered how you managed to cut through that with the success that your organisation has had and your relationship with the peace process that existed.
Yeah, I mean, I've often been called naive by people in Northern Ireland who will say, as an Englishman, what the hell do you know? And who are you to interfere in our domestic problems? And I don't argue historical points. I don't know the history as well as they do. My history A-level stopped at Gladstone. But I argue from the humanitarian point of view, that's all. That's the only legitimacy I have as a victim. If I'm to be classed as a victim because Tim died, then my legitimacy starts and ends with my taking a peaceful, conciliatory perspective on how to resolve conflict. And on that, nobody will out-argue me. But of course, I can't go to and fro with them on history and who did what when and to whom and why. That's beyond my comprehension. So yes, I am naive, but I'm forcefully naive. And if you want an argument with me, come and sit down and have an argument with me, and I'll argue with anybody about anything. But in the end, that's all it will be, an argument. And my wife gets very worried when I become argumentative because she thinks I'm going to go over the edge. But actually, I don't. Unless Everton have lost, of course, and then I'm a bit unhappy. Yes, I was happy this weekend, thank you.
There are some parallels with work that's being done in Israel, Palestine, getting young people together from both sides and so on. Are there any plans to link up in any way, or do you follow some of those models? Or
yeah, we've got some tentative contact with groups who we would see as being similar in their philosophy to ourselves in the Middle East. But it's nothing more than that, because again, we just don't have the financial resources to pop over to the Middle East or bring some of them to us, and we're just not in that comfortable financial position. The whole reason I come and give talks like this is, for all I know, one of you might be a millionaire, and you might write me a check before I go, and that would enable us to start making those giant strides. But it's an aspiration rather than the reality. Interestingly enough, on September the 11th, 2006, we had the first Israeli-Palestinian group in our Peace Centre. And they're only there for a day, and I hadn't made any plans to see them, because it was really just a stopover point where they were coming to see our facilities and then move on. But I got a call from Kelly, the lady you saw on the DVD, saying, are you free? Could you pop down? I said, why? She said, because these two groups are so hostile and won't talk to each other. It's just, we don't know what to really do. So I said, sure, and I popped down, and they were all sat in our dining room, and they hadn't got a clue who I was, so I introduced myself. I explained to them my brief history and the building they were sitting in, how that came to be. And I fundamentally said to them, if I can make steps such as I did to try and reconcile myself to the loss of my son and go and talk to people whose politics in Ireland would be anathema to me, why can't you? And it didn't make them friends, but by the time I left, the gap had closed considerably, and they were at least talking. And that awfully heavy cloak of antagonism that was hanging in the air had largely dissipated. And that was simply because, again, I'm not a professional. I don't run the charity, but I'm there as the victim founder of the charity, and that carries a great deal of weight. If I just go and talk to people as a professional and say, this is good for your soul to work in peace and reconciliation, well, they may or may not buy it. But if I stand up and say it as a father and as a victim, it carries a damn sight more weight. It just does. I know that for a certain fact. So that's why I still remain actively involved. I could have walked away and said, it's set up now, get on with it. My time is over, but it isn't. Okay. Well, thank you very much for posing some questions and for listening.
Thank you, colleagues. Can I once again thank Colin on your behalf, wish him and his family and the Peace Foundation well. We can make our contribution to the Peace Foundation in the foyer outside, when Colin will remain behind to sign copies of Tim and Ordinary Boy. Can we show our thanks to Colin in the usual way?